Hey, and welcome back to Kidsafe Online. I'm Sensei Chris. Since I happen to be outdoors today, I thought I would spend some time recording some instructional techniques using our sticks. There's not a lot of content for students who want to practice their stick. I should start off by talking about the stick for a second. I'm using one of our practice sticks, which we sometimes call tambo, which means short stick. So this is the shorter of the two sticks that we practice with. I'm using a practice stick. It's made out of 3/4 inch PVC pipe, cut to the proper length and wrapped with electrical tape. This is a do-it-yourself project that you can do just to have something to practice with. They're not sufficient for serious impact work. One reason this is wrapped in electrical tape is that they do occasionally break. So we would want to use this solo on our own for practice, but we wouldn't use it against another stick. For that, we would use a wooden stick, which is what I usually use. I'm going to use the white one today because it's a little bit more visible on the video, but this is the standard stick and a lot more substantial. But if you don't have PVC and you don't have an actual wooden stick, you can also do this for practice. You can cut a pool noodle to the proper length. We'll talk about that in just a second. And you can practice at least learning the motions. This is useful for indoors, so you don't have to worry about knocking over the fish bowl or breaking the lamp, okay? So you can cut a pool noodle to the proper length. These are smaller pool noodles, like thinner ones that you sometimes see in the drugstore. The fat ones that you often see are a little too big for our purposes. So let's start off with the stick. How long should it be? There's an old joke that said, someone asked President Abraham Lincoln how long a man's legs should be, and he said, I'd say just about long enough to reach the ground. That's kind of the way we measure our sticks, except we're not going to reach the ground. What we're going to do is we're going to grab the stick and we're going to leave about 2 or 3 inches of space at the bottom, maybe a little more if you're a young kid, leaving this space underneath my hand. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring my camera down so you can see, is I'm going to point that stick down at the ground while standing in a neutral stance, and I want the end of the stick to just hit the top of my ankle bone, right there, but right there. So that's how long I'm going to cut it. This is the perfect length for me. It would be a little bit long for a child, but you would adjust. Okay, so we've got a proper stick, cut to length, carefully wrapped. Do wrap these PVC because the edges can be sharp and you could even literally hurt yourself. So we've got a stick, and we're going to start off in what's called natural grip. Natural grip is exactly what it sounds like. Hold it naturally, the way you would hold any other club or even a drumstick, okay? You're just going to leave those 3 inches at the bottom, and you're going to hold it in your dominant hand. So in my case, I'm going to do everything mirror image backwards, but I'm going to use my dominant hand, which happens to be this one. But you can think of this as your right hand. So we're going to hold the stick in our right hand, and the first thing we're going to talk about is the guard. So when we practice with our empty hands, we do our self-defense stance, where this arm is the guard that just protects the front of our body. Well, when I'm holding a stick, the stick is my guard. So I get to hold it a little bit further away from my body, and I'm going to turn sideways so that you can see it's also angled forward. It's not flat, but it goes from about my waist height to about my shoulder height. And it goes from one hip to the opposite shoulder. So this is my guard position. And from here, I can defend with the stick, or I can chamber or load a stick strike by going to a parking position, a ready position. So we're going to start from a guard. Another thing about the guard, just as with our empty hands, both hands are part of the guard. There's the front one and then there's the back one. The back one protects my head. The front one protects the rest of my body. When I'm holding a stick, the stick protects most of me, but my other hand is directly behind the stick. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but it's called an active second hand. You don't want it to be flailing around like this, and you don't want it to be like a fencer behind you. You want it to be between you and your opponent. So here's my guard. And from this position, we can start to practice strikes. It might be more interesting to start with blocking first, but strikes are more fun, so we're going to start with that. I'm going to back up just so far enough so you can see me. You're going to take the stick, you're going to bring it over your shoulder on your dominant side, and you're going to point it directly away from your opponent. So the end of the stick is aimed right at you. That's my ready position for my first strike, which is going to go down and across my body. Notice that I didn't straighten the stick here. I kept my wrist a little bent till I get through the center line. If you're picturing an imaginary line cutting this computer screen in half. As soon as I get past that, then I'm going to bring the stick around and I'm going to chamber it down here. If I want to do my strikes in order, I would go up to the next parking position, but it's a little more fun to go back and forth. So from this low parking position, I'm going to go back over my shoulder. And you can start by going with diagonal strikes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice that the stick goes as far away from my body as it reaches, and then as it goes through that center line, I park it by my hip. If I bring it up to my opposite shoulder, I've got my 2 strike, my second strike, and I'm going to come down and across. And again, when I cross my center line, I'm going to let that stick turn around and chamber it in the low position. This is not a very comfortable position, but you're going to use it sometimes. You can point it down and back behind you. So I can go from above my opposite shoulder, down and across, up and back, down and across. Now you want to keep the stick going in this direction. You don't want to be doing some kind of twirly motion in front of you. You want the end of the stick to be moving first through the center line. And when you get to about center line, recover the stick to the opposite shoulder. 1, 2. Works better if you turn your body. 1. Good. So now we've got this X pattern that we can start to do. I'm going to start over my dominant shoulder, and I'm going to do strike number 1. Instead of going back up, I'm going to lift that stick up to the opposite shoulder and do strike number 2. So your second pattern, the first pattern is back and forth, but your second pattern is going to be from the first chambering position, down, up to my shoulder, down. And then that sort of automatically kind of rolls up to my shoulder. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. The next 2 strikes are pretty logical. You can guess them. You're going to go right across. Going to cut right across the center and recover to that. You can recover to your shoulder. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, I'm just counting my strikes, but these are not the actual numbers that we use when we use these strikes. We actually number them like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can do those first 4 strikes. 1, 2, 3, 4. From this low position, we can do the next one, which is an upward strike. And I want to strike out towards my opponent and recover to my shoulder. So once again, we were doing this strike before when we were going up and down. But now we're just going to go down, down, across, across, up. Then come down under the other arm, up. So you can see the pattern looks like this. Draw the X, draw the line across, then start low and draw the X going up and up. So we've got 6 basic strikes. Now I'm going to call them off by order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I end up back where I started from. For the 7th strike, which is a vertical downward strike, we have 2 choices. We can strike to the center of our line and bring the stick out. You got to be careful not to hit yourself in the knee. Boom. Or we can pivot our body, strike to the center, and bring the stick across our body. They're both 7 strikes, 7 or 7. For now, we're actually going to do the easier 7 strike. Come down and across my body. Then 8 is pretty obvious, coming straight up. And once again, we don't want to do this. We don't want to strike. I'm going to come closer to the camera so you can see. You don't want to be striking like this. You actually want the back side of your hand, the back end of the stick coming up first, then straightening out. And when you get to about here, you get to turn the stick around. So you don't want to be doing up. If you can picture why that would be, is if I'm striking with my stick and my wrist is in a weird position, it's actually going to hurt me. But if I'm striking with my stick, I want my fingers behind that strike. All right, let's go through our numbers again from the beginning, starting from a guard, chambering or parking the stick over my right shoulder, coming down to cross 1, cross 2, straight across 3, straight across 4, upwards diagonal 5, upwards diagonal 6, downwards and pivot my body, so get that back leg out of the way a little bit, and upwards and straighten back up again. And then I recover the stick to this position. So that's 8 strikes. Let's count them again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are kind of fun. So we're going to do 9 and 10. I'm going to get a little closer to the camera. 9 and 10 are a very strange way of striking with the stick. Now, I just told you we're going to try and strike with the front edge of the stick and use the handle first. And we're going to strike like this most of the time. But these 2 strikes do not. For these 2 strikes, you're actually going to turn your hand exactly the same motion that you use for an inside block. You're just going to go a little bit further than you normally do. So holding my stick in a natural grip, thinking of it as a straight line across my head. So I've got this stick above my head. I'm going to bring my hand across. My stick is going to rotate over my head and point back towards my opponent. Boom. So if I do an inside block, that's 9. Do an outside block, that's 10. So I'm now striking with the stick side to side. 1, 1, 2. This is a closer range strike. I can't reach as far with it, but it might be as I come closer to my opponent, striking with the stick in this helicopter motion. Again, it becomes really important to use your other hand to guard your body. 1, 2. Good. So these are strike number 9 and 10. Let's go from the top and get through strike number 9 and 10, and then we'll do the final 2 strikes. So we start off from our guard. We're going to chamber over our shoulder, striking down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. From here, I'm going to thrust straight forward with my stick. And that would be number 11. So I go 9, 10. My arm is on the dominant side of my body, my main hand. I'm going to come straight in and stab upwards and inwards. You could be aiming at the belly, you could be aiming under the throat, but upwards and inward. If you really want to be pretty about it, you could aim straight forward, but this actually works better from a standpoint of not hurting yourself and having a good grip on your stick. So, good, 11. 12, we're going to switch grips. So we're going to take this stick in our other hand, flip it upside down, and grab it again. So now I have what's called reverse grip. Got a little bit of stick on the top of my hand, I got the rest of the stick on the bottom of my hand. So after I do strike number 11, I'm going to reverse that stick. My fingers are up, grabbing the stick. I'm going to tuck it along the side of my arm. I'm going to take a step back, slide the stick along my body, and push right behind me. Just to show you what that looks like from the side, we've got 10, reversing the stick, 11. And you notice my arm is wrapped slightly over the stick. It's not floating out here. My arm is wrapped. I'm going straight back. I'm actually coming towards the middle of my body. I'm not sticking out. I'm coming back behind me. Someone's directly behind me, and I'm like, get away from me. So that is my last strike. I'm going to flip my stick around again to a natural grip, and we're going to go through all 12 strikes. Ready? From a guard, chamber above your head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, reverse the grip, step back, 12. So I have the stick in my reverse grip after my 12th strike. If I wanted to repeat the drill again, I would flip it back to a natural grip, chamber up to my head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I end up with the stick in a reverse grip, and that's a good place to bow out. If you have questions, put them in the comments. But mainly, the main thing I'd like to see you doing is practicing those strikes until they become very natural and flowing. When you do your strikes properly, you should be getting some sound. Which leads me to the last thing. First and last thing with weapons is always safety. So even with this plastic stick, don't recommend working indoors. I really think if you have to be indoors, you should be focused on that softer technique, and then get something a little heavier and get out in the backyard where you have room to do this safely. Always be aware, not just what's in front of you and beside you, but also what's behind you, because as these strikes go, they're going to come behind you. They're going to come behind you. They're going to come behind you. So whatever's back there, it better not be breakable. So as always, have fun, practice regularly, and be safe. I'm Sensei Chris. See you in the next video.